Hello and welcome, it's the Green Squire with the basics of transport. So when we go ahead and click on one of the transports, you'll see two purple icons down here in the bottom left. One of them says transport, one of them says ferry. Now oddly enough, if you are just starting out, I actually really like this ferry icon, and let me show you what it does. So all you have to do with this ferry button is just click it, left click it, and now your mouse cursor will turn into the icon itself. And then all you have to do is just left click where you want the units to be dropped off. So maybe let's drop them off next to these mass extractors. And now if I press the shift button down, you can see there is this purple line from the transport to where we clicked. And now there is this purple icon on the ground. So now all you have to do is simply select the units you want and tell them to board the icon itself. If you see, I am clicking on the icon and not the ferry, so just make sure you have it over the icon so this kind of blue square surrounds it. And I just right click that. They will go ahead and jump on. And then if I speed this up a little bit, the ferry will go over to its destination, drop off the units, and go back home. The neat thing about this is that if you queue up more units to go in the waypoint while the ferry is gone, it will automatically come back and automatically pick up the units again. So as long as this little icon is here, and as long as the transport is alive, it will keep doing these routes as long as you keep putting units in this little icon. Super easy. Another cool quality of life feature of the Ferry Command is that if I have too many units to fit on one single transport, like let's just go ahead and ferry these tanks over to this super high mountain over here. If I tell all these tanks to do it, and I tell them to go on here, all these tanks is just too much for this one T1 transport, so if you build another one, you can actually tell the other transport to assist this little icon right here. Again, super easy, just get any other transport, right click on the existing icon, and then this guy will jump in and do the exact same route, and together they will keep dropping off units as much as they can carry, come back for more, and it's all automated and extremely easy. I also just want to mention briefly that while you can tell one ferry to assist the other existing icon, it also works if you select multiple ferries at one time, and then while they're all selected, if you give a ferry command, it will kind of make just one icon between the two in the middle of them, and it will essentially do the exact same thing, but now if one of them dies, the icon will stay there. I generally like to just do it with one, and then if I need more help, I like to just tell others to assist it, but you can also do it this way if you so choose. Another incredibly useful aspect of the ferry command is how to not go in just a straight line. For instance, say your opponent has a little base on this island, but if I was to do a ferry command just from here with something like an artillery drop or something, and I hold shift, this flies right over their anti-air turrets. We don't want to do that. Ideally, we would want to go around and land in the back of the base where they are unprotected, and it's actually super easy to do that. So if I just give this guy a little move command to make the icon go away, all you have to do is hold the shift button, the left shift button, and then I give him a wide range around here. So again, all I'm doing is just holding shift and left clicking, and then maybe I give his final waypoint right there. So now you can see I am skirting the air defenses. Now if I tell all my artillery to jump in, and I speed this up a couple, if we zoom out, you can see that the transport follows the route we set up, and when he gets to the very last waypoint, he will drop off the units and continue back the exact same route in the opposite direction. And look at that, our artillery drop worked, and we still have the transport, and again, super easy to do. There are also a couple ways you can interact with the factories themselves. The first one is to simply tell a factory to assist the waypoint. So all I'm doing, again, I have a factory selected, and I literally just right click on an existing ferry icon. Now if I queue up some units to build and speed it up a little bit, the units will automatically load onto the transport and continue on the route like normal. This will work with infinite production. It will just keep running the route until the transport is destroyed. But one thing to be aware of with this method, telling the factory to assist the ferry icon, is that sometimes the transport will not load up fully. If it thinks a unit will take too long to produce, I'm actually not quite sure the exact specifics of when it will take off unfully loaded, but sometimes it will indeed fly off not fully loaded, and that's just something to be aware of when you're telling a factory to assist right here. To make sure that a transport is fully laden before it takes off, you're instead going to want to have the transport assist the factory. So now if we give this factory some queues, and let me just go ahead and queue up a couple waypoints just to showcase how this works. Now if I queue up again some tanks, the transport is assisting the factory this time. Go ahead and speed this up. The transport will guaranteed wait until it's full every time, and it will follow the rally points of the factory this time. So again, it's following the same kind of circular route. It drops them off at the last waypoint, and then it follows the same route back, and will continue to wait until either it's full or until the production queue finishes. It didn't make too big a difference in this example because the tanks are very quick to make, but if you want to prioritize a steady stream of units, you should have the factory assist the ferry icon, or if it's more important to ensure the transport is at maximum capacity for maximum damage, you should have the transport assist the factory. Okay, so now about the actual transport button itself. After all, this is a transport. You use this by manually queuing up some units to load onto a factory. Let me speed this up again. So again, no ferry command or anything. The units are just on the ferry. And then you manually give them a transport somewhere, and the transport will literally just drop them off and hang out right by them. If you do want to use this transport button, it's usually a good idea to work in the returning to base as part of your workflow. So if you manually drop them off somewhere, you should also queue up a return home right after so the transport doesn't get shot down. This is actually one of the reasons I prefer the ferry button, since you don't have to worry about doing a return home command with ferry. But one of the instances you will certainly want to use this transport command is, if you look here, my transport, again, it's full. If my transport is on the way somewhere with units in it, it can be part of a ferry command or not, and you see enemy air interceptors coming in and they're going to destroy your transport, you're going to quick select transport and quick drop it off right under the transport, and then hopefully doing this will save your units. It's very unlikely your transport will get out of this alive, but at least with this transport button dropping it right under where your transport happens to be, it can try to drop off the units and salvage something. Another incredibly useful tip you'll use in almost every game where you use transports is if you move some units onto a transport, in this case some engineers right here, is dropping these units off at different locations. It's super easy. All you have to do is click a unit and then click where you want them to go. So if I click this guy and I click right here, and then I click the second engineer, I hold shift, and maybe let's drop him off up here, and then maybe let's drop 2 engineers off on this side island. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when you're using this transport functionality, it's always good to send your transport back home. And now if we look over, 1 engineer's there. This transport is only carrying 3 units. He drops off the second engineer and is going to the last side island. He drops off both engineers like we queued earlier, and then he is heading back home. So again, super useful command. Most games where there's transports, you'll probably want to do stuff like this. Super easy. You don't actually need to click this button. Again, all you need to do is left click the unit, left click where you want it to go, hold shift, and keep doing that for however many times you want to drop off units. Another cool trick you can do is pre-queuing unit orders before they even get off of the transport. And it's a little bit tricky to do, but conceptually it's not that difficult. So I'm just going to grab an engineer right here, and I'm going to tell him to get onto the transport, but before he actually loads on, I'm going to hold shift and then give him another order. So I'm holding shift right now. Actually, he's assisting the factory, so make sure if you hold shift, they don't have any waypoints coming out of them. So I'm holding shift, scroll out, I'm going to tell him to get on the transport, and then maybe I'll build a mass extractor close to where I plan to drop him off. So now you can see I'm holding shift. Now that he's on the transport, I actually can't select him, he just kind of went away. But I'm holding shift and he still has that command. So wherever he gets dropped off, he'll try to go do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do something similar with another engineer. I'm going to hold shift. Again, I think he's assisting this factory, so make sure they don't have any waypoints. So I'm going to scroll out, hold shift, tell him to join, and then maybe this guy will work on a land factory when he gets off. And you can do this as much as you like. Just make sure to leave a little bit of room so that while they're walking to the ferry, you have time to queue up some commands. So I think that should be enough to showcase the point. Now with the transport laden with the engineers, we can go ahead and give him a transport command, hopefully somewhere near where all these actions are happening. Maybe right in the middle there. And then again, since I used this manual transport button, I'm going to send him home. And let's watch. So he's going to drop off the engineers, and all 3 of them will right away start working on their projects. This guy had to clear some reclaim to make room for the factory, but you get the idea. All 3 of them simultaneously started as soon as they were dropped off, and I had all of that pre-queued from before they even got on the transport here. So very useful indeed. And the last tip I have for this video is something called Ghetto Gunships. And that is, if we look at the Tech 1 Air Factory, we do not see a gunship at the Tech 1 stage. We see one at Tech 2 and Tech 3, but only the Cybrins are the ones with a Tech 1 gunship. Enter the Ghetto Gunship. If you go to a land factory and you queue up these light assault bots, 3 of these factions have these: UAF, Cybrin, and Aeon. The Seraphim do not have these guys, but again, if your faction does have the light assault bot, you can queue them up, put them on a transport, and these guys are the only units in the game that are actually able to fire off of the transport itself. So while it's flying around, these guys will be blabbing with their little guns, and let's just go ahead and test that out really quick. Alright, so here this guy's coming in, he has 6 light assault bots on him, and if we kind of zoom in here, a little bit hard to get an angle, but yeah, you can see each one of those guys firing their little weapons off of the transport itself. And whoops, that was a little bit silly. I think the transport tried to land right there, but if you tell the transport to go in circles and not have it land in front of a point defense gun, it's actually a pretty useful weapon that you can utilize at the Tech 1 stage in place of a regular gunship. You can put these light assault bots on Tech 2 gunships, but by the Tech 2 stage, your opponent will have flak weapons, and the flak weapons will just massacre the light assault bots. I think it only takes a couple shots for the entire cargo to be destroyed, so it's generally not as useful as the Tech 1 stage, and by the Tech 2 stage, you have regular gunships anyway. The one exception is the UEF, who have their super heavy transports, and this thing actually has a shield around it which will protect it from the flak. But again, these things, Ghetto Gunships, are mostly just used at the Tech 1 stage before you get access to gunships. But yeah guys, if you learned something, consider subscribing, and as always, stay tuned for more to come.